Hey!
Hey!
Yeah, that's on here.
All right. So we're back at it.
Hold on.
What am I holding on for?
So we gotta,
Oh,
there we go.
got that now?
Technical difficulties.
Woo!
That
Man.
tends to happen from
Yeah,
time to time.
it's a Friday. That'll happen. Let's turn that sound down.
Oh yeah, so you
Listen
want to
to
listen to
us.
ourselves? You
Yeah.
like doing that? Okay. There. Grab some popcorn and settle in, folks. I love that. Did you write that?
I did.
Yeah, you're such a writer.
I did.
Yeah, that's good. It's really good.
Remind me of the Terrell Owens. Was it Terrell Owens? Grab some popcorn.
After you score the touchdown and he from the cheerleader.
Yeah.
From the cheerleader?
I think we're mixing up things here.
Cool.
Yeah.
So beautiful day in Duluth today.
Yeah.
55 degrees? Something like that. I know this week we spent some time, we had some meetings outside, went onto the pier here in Duluth, over by the lift bridge.
Mm-hmm.
I know you took a kind of...
Should we introduce ourselves, you think?
Oh, I'm sorry, this is the 8-Bit Podcast. I just take it for granted people know what this is. But
It's true.
This is our, we're going to make this a weekly podcast now, so every Friday in the afternoon, unless some big major thing comes up, where we can't do it, but I think we're going to try to do this
some
every
major
week.
client work, or we don't feel like it.
Like when we don't go to work out with our personal trainer.
Right.
Wait, we have a personal trainer?
So 8-Bit Podcast.
8-Bit Podcast. So
Creative Arcade.
yeah. So no, it's been beautiful. It's finally spring. I'm safely saying it's spring. Doesn't mean we won't get any more snow in Duluth, but
Yeah.
it is spring technically by the
Mm-hmm.
calendar. Change of seasons. Like I said, we spent some time outside this week, which was good. Did some. I know we're working on redoing our website, so we did some planning out there at the pier, and
Took some cool photos, some cool video.
the other day, real quick. So Lake Superior is crazy, right? Because it's the largest freshwater lake in the world, right? It can be the meanest thing in the world, and then the other day was amazing. It was so calm, you can see a ripple on the lake. It was.
I've never seen it like that.
It was eerie.
It was very eerie. So
Not Lake Erie. It was Lake Superior Erie.
Right.
Right.
It's the 6th Great Lake.
Right.
Right.
So, anyways, that was nuts. But
So actually, it's funny because we should rewind a little bit. Looking at the way that it was so calm and no ripples, like you said, and the only other thing that reminds me of is what was that, 10 years ago, and we went out there, and it was frozen.
Yeah.
But it froze clear, so you could walk out for quite a ways, but you could see straight down to the bottom. There was no bubbles or air in it, and it was just it was eerie. And then the next day we went out there, I think it melted a little overnight, or during the day, and then froze at night, and it froze cloudy, so you couldn't see it anymore. So it was kind of a once in a lifetime thing, maybe.
I think it probably is. I mean, if it does happen again, I'll probably be too old to even care to go out there. But
well, and that's when that father and daughter found that shipwreck off the off the shore of.
It's a coast.
It's
man.
a Friday.
It's a coast.
off the shore of.
You almost did it again.
I almost did it again. Of Park Point. Whew, we got totally sidetracked.
Do you remember where you live?
No, I don't know.
Okay.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, the weather's nice. We were talking to a client today from Boston area, and she couldn't believe that we've had snow in June before. We told her it doesn't happen very often, but it's definitely happened before. So
yeah, it definitely doesn't happen every year, but it can happen.
Yeah.
I know I actually moved back. I like to plant a garden every year, and usually people, at least in this part of the country, always say, oh, usually by, Memorial Day, it should be fairly safe to plant your garden. And I've done that how many years and gotten burned every time. So now I don't even bother till it's at least June to even plant it. Right. Because it always ends up with stuff dying on me.
Right.
More so than it already does die.
Yeah. This is a good transition to our topic of the day.
Dying? No.
career.
Yeah. Anyways, no, but it's funny, so we're talking about change, and today we thought we would talk a little bit about, obviously change is hard. In the line of work that we do and the things we do for clients or prospective clients, and we do a lot of brand identity work. And I think a lot of times when it comes to, obviously it's a little easier at times to start from scratch, with a new brand identity. But change is hard, and when you maybe have already established business, and then to have to up and change your brand identity can be a very difficult process sometimes. So
sure.
I don't know, we're going to talk about that today a little bit, but
yeah, I think we'll kind of run through some of what we find to be positives in this process for changing your brand identity. Some of the things that maybe are a little more challenging, and then we'll talk about what we think is the right process and the way to do things.
Yeah. So along those lines, what are some of those reasons people or organizations might want to change their identity?
Yeah, I think some of the stuff we've gone through before would be organizational change, whether that's new people coming in, buying the company that are internal or external coming in, and they're looking to change things up a little bit. I would say that's one. Mm-hmm. Recent, any kind of merger or acquisition, kind of along those same lines, maybe merging with another company, you combine names and business practices and things like that. Name changes.
Yep.
Sometimes they're very subtle, sometimes they're a little bit larger,
Or, sometimes there's businesses that have been around a long time, and so they've already built a lot of brand loyalty. And sometimes it's just time to just get with the times, too. Even if you look at many established brands, if you look at, I think sometimes it's hard for people to understand that, a lot of times these bigger brands out there are always evolving. They're the way they present themselves. And again, could be a lot of things, like you said, organizational things. Maybe they're selling a new kind of product. Maybe they've switched up their service lines, or like you said, in a merger, maybe they've acquired some service lines, which might change the core of what they do. So there's a lot of those things, but a lot of things I think people don't understand, or I think we're so bombarded by messaging in general that I think a lot of times you don't necessarily notice the subtle things.
Yeah.
If you actually took and Googled, and I'm just pulling McDonald's up, but if you look over from, they started in the late 40s, early 50s to now, and obviously everyone knows them as the Golden Arches, but even that, if you look at that, there's so many iterations of part of the brand identity is a logo, and I think people a lot of times get that messed up.
Sure.
They think, your logo is your brand, and but if you think of that from a consumer side, or if you ever look at that, there's an evolution there that there's probably, I don't know how many iterations in between where they started and where they are today. And some things might be real subtle. Could be a simple font change or maybe a color change. Could be a lot of those things. I
noticed the other day I pulled up Pandora music online, and I noticed they had changed their logo. It was subtle. I don't know if everybody would notice it, but it was something I definitely noticed. And I noticed they changed the icon as well on my phone. So like you said, it's subtle. And sometimes they don't make a big deal out of it. Sometimes they make a big deal. I would say, sometimes too we find that some logos are definitely dated and, aren't very modern looking and things like that. So sometimes it's just a matter of freshening it up a little bit, and, whether that's a font change, a color change, maybe removing a few elements, things like that. So we get a lot of that too.
Yeah. So what's the positives that you can take away from doing obviously there's all those different things that would maybe require you to change or might want you to change. What are some positives that you can take away from doing a brand identity change?
Well, I think like you said, it's not just the logo, it's the logo and everything that goes with it, the fonts, the photography, the voice of the business. So I think it's a nice chance for you to update all of those things. Maybe you need a new website, new collateral with brochures and ads and billboards, things like that. It's a chance for you to freshen everything up, and maybe at that time you're launching some new products or some new services or something like that too. It's a way to get in front of people and say, hey, we're still around, and guess what, we're evolving. I think that's a great reason, I think, to do it.
Right. That's true. I mean, and again, when you think about change, I think it's easy to say, well, again, change is hard. Especially again if you're established, to say, well, no one's going to know who we are anymore, because if we change up everything, they're not going to know that it's us still. Well, that's not true.
Right.
It's a valid concern, but I mean, I think a lot of times, no, definitely it can be done way incorrectly and hurt your business. Definitely, it's happened.
Yeah.
It's I know even last year, Instagram went through another change to their identity. They got even more ultra clean and ultra modern from where you think about where they start off with the little camera, and now it's a simple line drawing of like an outline of a camera.
Yeah.
But I think it did really resonate. I think a lot of people thought it was almost too much of a change, but if you think of their core audience, though, I don't think their core demographic cared all that much.
Right.
It's still one of the most used things in the world, and so I think a lot of times too, people forget who their target is. Just because I interact with a brand, and if they change it, why are they changing it, or that's a dumb change but maybe you're not the target. I think sometimes too, people don't realize that just because you use it doesn't mean that you're exactly who their core group is. So I don't know. I guess I was kind of rambling there a little bit.
No, I think that's right. I think some of this stuff we can talk about when we talk about the process too, on how to get that word out there. I would say, when we were talking about the positive part of it, is to get into those new audiences. Maybe, like we said, maybe you're doing things a little bit differently now, or you realize to stay, viable, you need to get into these different areas or different demographics and things like that. So you might need to appeal to a younger audience or more digital audience, or X, Y, and Z.
Right.
I think that's another great way to change too, or another great reason to change. And I think too, you talk about people that worry about why are they changing their brand. I feel like that happens a lot in food.
Yeah.
They upgrade food or update food packaging, whether whatever the reason. They might not change the formula or the recipe at all, but I think people do get a little weirded out about that at first.
Right. Because what am I getting?
Right.
They think if it changes, that something else changed.
Right.
And so I mean, that's where it is. Sometimes maybe it is a fine line about that you're walking there of what does this mean to our core audience? What does this mean to maybe your outlying audiences? And what really matters at the bottom line? So I mean that's a good point.
I think we've talked about some of the challenges already inadvertently.
Yeah, right.
I think some of the other challenges are obviously the cost of doing this, the actual process itself, paying for somebody to do this can be expensive, and we'll lay out some of the reasons why, but there's a lot involved with redoing a logo and identity and all of those things. So I think that's one thing that turns people away. And I would say also the cost of all their physical attributes, whether that's their signage, their vehicles are wrapped in their logo.
Right.
They got 50,000 business cards left because they bought them all on an online service or something, letterhead.
Right.
And there's definitely ways that we deal with all of those things. So yeah, it is a challenge and it's something you need to be prepared for, but I don't think it should be a roadblock for the right, if it's the right fit for you.
Yeah. Do you think sometimes too that, well, there's obvious those specific like hard items, like you said, stationery and signs and stuff. You think from a process standpoint, people get scared off of that, or you think that's more of a secondary concern too? There is just the single process and time it takes to do something like that properly.
Yeah. I mean, I think so definitely that it's part of that.
Yeah.
And we recommend oftentimes, it depends on every individual circumstance, but we don't always recommend just because you go through a new logo and identity, that you change everything right away.
Right. Kind of a phase.
Yeah,
yeah.
You go with some of the more important things right away, and maybe integrate some of the expensive things as you can or as needed.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's rip it off and let's do it all at once.
Right.
I would say too, going back to one of the reasons you might want to do this is, your business might have gone through some negative stuff too, and you're trying to reassure everybody that there's been
something new, and
we've changed.
That's a good point. That's a good one that we totally forgot. Yeah. That's almost probably one of a really good time to do it.
Yeah.
And I guess it ties into the organizational thing, because you might have over time something may have happened, whether it's within your control or not, that might hurt your overall perception, which ultimately your brand is how people perceive you. It's not strictly the logo and all this. It's all the other things, it's all the other tangibles, And so if there was some kind of and it could be a totally your fault. It could totally not be your fault.
My fault?
Well, his fault.
Right.
No, I don't know, but
I get you.
So no, that's a good point. And so sometimes too, if you get those organizational things cleaned up, and that some of that negativity is maybe cleaned up, then maybe it's time to say, well, here's the brand new, insert your company here or organization, just to show here's our commitment to you. We are about this. This is our position. These are the things that make us who we are. This is why we do what we do. And so it's not necessarily always running away from it. It's maybe acknowledging that, but obviously the past is the past, and how do you move on from there and fix things? And so that's the way to convey that. Right. Sometimes in that form. So no, that's a good point. Totally forgot about it.
I'm sure there's 50 we're forgetting about.
Probably.
But one of the common concerns we have from clients too is talking about the confusion of their clients and internal audiences, and people aren't going to understand what's going on. That should be a concern. But I think, we'll talk again a little bit more about the process, but again, I feel like if you have the correct reasons to do a logo, identity, a rebrand, however you're doing, whatever part of this you're doing, if you have the correct reasons going into it, I think all the rest, all these other things can be dealt with.
Yeah.
But how about shareholders that aren't in agreement?
Yeah, I mean that's true. Sometimes you have companies that you might have more of a sole proprietor. Someone who actually is calling the shots at the end, and maybe you've got management you're working with, but ultimately you have one person that you have to to move forward with. And there's times you've got partnerships and bigger boards of directors and things like that, and larger committees. That can be a lot more difficult, because obviously you've got everyone wanting to voice their concerns or things that they have ideas about, and what that organization means to them, and how that should be conveyed through the new identity. And that definitely is a process. Definitely is a process that again, all situations are different, but I think they're again, when you think about research, if you can back up and rationalize, obviously here's your challenges, here's what we're hearing, or here's what we found out in discovery and research to either validate those claims, or maybe there's something that we can differentiate from someone else. I think if you can create the case, then I think from there it's easier to bring a lot of those people in line.
Yeah.
Again, you might still not win everyone, but most of the time it's going to be a majority wins out kind of vote on that. So as long as you can sway enough minds based on all that, I think those are ways that you can work through that process. As hard as it could maybe be sometimes,
Well, I think that one, the shareholders that aren't in agreement, is a challenge on their end and our end quite a bit, because we have to sometimes mediate that. And I think the more successful stories that we've seen, I would say, is when they go into it in agreement. They might not agree how everything's going to pan out, but they at least understand they have to have some kind of a change. So that seems to be a lot easier, instead of bringing 3 on board and 2 aren't on board.
Right, 3 want to do it and 2 don't. At least if they're all in agreement, they want to change, whatever that ends up being, that's half the battle.
Right, and so many times that's completely out of our control. We try to help, but sometimes that's not.
Right.
It's above our pay grade.
Right. Pay grade.
Right.
Yeah, that's funny. Well, sorry, just to be transparent, we got some make sure we didn't forget everything, because this is a huge topic. I got a kind of list over here I'm looking at. So the other thing, and I would have forgot this. The flip side is, I think sometimes, as much as there's all these good reasons to maybe change up, sometimes I think you run into times too where I think people get a little too happy with wanting to change their identity, where now it's the kind of the flip side of it. It's like, well, we just want to change because we want to change.
Yeah.
And that's kind of playing with fire a little bit.
Sorry, I see myself going off on a completely different tangent here.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's a good one though.
Go for it.
All right. So speaking, we do know a company that we're very fond of. It's called Space 150.
Oh yeah.
And their whole deal is they change their whole identity every 150 days. That's everything. That's their logo, their website, everything. 150 days, which is just insane to me. I can't imagine we went through the process once and it was insane.
We're trying to go through our own website right now again, and that's
right.
That's kind of taking a while.
So they do it every 150 days, and they're extremely popular, or I should say successful. I shouldn't say popular, but piggybacking on that is something you posted the other day. Was Space 150 actually works with Nike, and they it almost sounded like it was almost on a fly idea. Came up with an idea of putting one of their shoes into space with a weather balloon.
It's their Air Max series.
Yeah. And lo and behold, how long after they decided to do this was it up in the air? And
it was like 2 days or something?
Yeah, 2 days. They had a shoe up in orbit. And, I don't know if it was in orbit, but it was in space. And
well, it was basically in the upper stratosphere, which was considered space. If you see the video, it looks like space.
Yeah.
Most of it.
And they were saying in some of the articles we were reading about it is a lot of people thought it was fake.
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't look real, that's fake. Well, it was legitimately up there. And then the weather balloon exploded, and the shoe came down in a nice little parachute and landed in a farm somewhere, right?
Yeah, what did it say? It said they actually charted the weather balloon course, and it was like a 60-mile. It actually covered 60 miles from where they let it off to where the shoes dropped.
Yeah.
It was like a 60-mile away.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it is really cool.
I love being able to do something instead of photoshopping it or faking it. If you don't have to, if you can do it in real, I just love that.
Yeah, it's quite a feat.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah,
shoe feat.
You got that?
Yeah, it is. All right, so back from the tangent.
Okay, nice.
We should have some music when we come back from a tangent, kind of like Wayne's World. Yeah. So we wanted to talk about the process.
Yeah.
So I think our number one thing is. First of all, you need to work with the process, and that process would start off with working with a professional. I don't think we can stress that enough about working with a professional.
Right.
It doesn't have to be us. It should be us, but it doesn't. It doesn't have to be us.
I just want to clarify too. I mean, I think a professional can mean a lot of different things. I think we're just saying that over the years, to each their own. But sometimes, if I had a dime for every time I heard I had my cousin-in-law, who's got a program, do this for me, and and I think a lot of times people mean well. I think they are trying to put some things in place for I guess it's kind of cutting a corner a little bit, and those are the times that I think maybe in the short term it might work out for them.
Yeah,
it's always the long term stuff that I think it's a problem.
Well, if you're doing a little hobby side business out of your garage, do it. Do whatever you can to cut corners. But if you're making a legit business out of something and you want to grow and expand and be around for a while, I would say work with a professional.
Right. Do it right the first time. Not to say that. Or maybe in a few years you might have to consider a rebrand because of maybe one of the things we just talked about. Mm-hmm. But at least get yourself off on the right foot.
Yeah.
It's definitely one of those things that to go back and change it later is like we just outlined. It's a lot of work. Mm-hmm. It can be a lot of cost. Sometimes even redo it. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of time and effort and a lot more goes into it than just sitting down and making something.
Yeah.
And so. It's like anything. If you start off, trying to save $1 here or there, but really if you just spent whatever in the long run, it's probably going to be better to start off the right way than the wrong way.
For sure.
So,
and if they say, yeah, I have Photoshop, then stop right there. Should ask them right away if they're not using Illustrator, run.
Right.
I'm not kidding. We also, I mean, we see the other side of that too, you know, because we'll pick up clients that, you know, obviously are established, and now we're working with them in other areas, and they'll send us a logo or say, hey, can you just take the one off the website? And it's like they don't have the proper files, and I think that's too bad for them if they don't have the proper files and things like that to start with. And
sometimes education piece too, where you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
You know,
and actually we are going to be doing a blog, and we have an infographic and a few other things coming out here. I don't know, soon. About more of this logo process of how we do it, how we think it should be done, and how to use your logo is another big thing.
Yep.
You know, you're often not given those tools to understand how you should be using them in different, whether digital or print, things like that. But we'll be talking about that soon.
Yeah.
So going back, I think, you know, there's many other things that are involved with our process. But I think one of the other things we always talk about is the research part of it. What you got there?
Oh, keep talking.
Oh, I'm talking. So one of the things we do a lot of too is, and not everybody does, is make sure you know your audience, do a lot of research. You got to know the client, you got to know their clients and their audience, and that's one of the big things that we do right away. So basically, you know your audience. And then I think, again, we're skipping a lot of steps because we're going to cover this more in detail. But going back to some of the challenges of doing a redesign of, you know, the logo or identity would be some of the confusion that maybe the internal people have and the external audience has. And I think we talk about that a lot with the education part of it towards the end of the process is, you know, before you roll out, you need to educate your internal, you know, employees and staff and people that, hey, here's what we're doing, here's how it's happening, and you're going to see a new logo and identity, and this is why we're doing it, and educate them first, get them on board. You know, in some cases you might actually do that way before you ever even start the process, and then we think, you know, there's usually a step of, you know, informing your clients, your current clients and customers. You know, if you have a lot of vendors, things like that, you might want to let them know what's going on first, and then finally you do kind of more of an external launch and kind of educate the world that, hey, we're either the same people, we're not the same people, whatever, however that works, so that you avoid a lot of that confusion.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, I start talking there.
Sorry, I cut out. I was having a little technical difficulty there for a bit. So.
Oh, good. But, everything's back on.
I think so. Yep.
Okay. Well, do we want to check? Is there? We got some people watching right now. Is there anybody that has any kind of questions here? We did the Q&A last week, and that seemed to work. We had a couple good questions, and we were able to answer them live. So if you have anything,
let us know.
Speak up now.
We'll give you a couple minutes here. Otherwise, I think we're kind of at the end. I know. You know, one thing we're talking with part of this is, you know, brand identity. A lot of times it also is tied to some goals you might be having. Mm-hmm. You know, so again, you think about organizational changes or something else where, you know, you might be starting fresh from somewhere else, and then, you know, what are those new goals? What are those things? And it kind of ties back into, again, plugging the smart marketing goals as we enter April in this next quarter. We put out last week, or no, the week before. Mm-hmm. There's a great sheet that it's a Excel doc basically, just to help you with kind of planning some of your goals. Mm-hmm. For your marketing, things you should be caring about in planning for your next quarter or maybe next venture or whatever that is. So, mm-hmm. So there's that. Yeah. So this was good today. I think there's definitely, you know, again, you think about what kind of sparked this idea today was obviously this week, and in fact we changed from winter to spring. You know, it's the old seasonal change and kind of
Spring cleanup.
right. So you know the whole change vibe is kind of led us to this piece here, and I think so. Next week, I think what we're going to talk about in the next iteration of the 8-Bit podcast next week. Also Facebook Live, probably mid-afternoon on Friday again, is change when it comes to your website. We do a lot of web development work from start to finish. That sounded like a, what do you call that?
Great, I like that.
No, but that's another big thing that we do here at Creative Arcade. I know we do a lot for a lot of different clients, and you know nowadays, you know the person's website's really. When we think back to the lifespan of the internet so far, you know, for a while no one had a website. Then everyone wanted a website. You know, then I think it became the new business card. You know, and then it kind of went to, you know, all these different types of websites and then different ways of managing it. Then comes the mobile phone, and what does that mean for it there? You know, and in the long run, ultimately, I think what we're finding is that, you know, your website really is the hub of everything you do nowadays. You know, there's even your traditional marketing, and then obviously in the digital side, and what that does as far as heavy lifting for you. So anyway, I think next week we're going to talk a little bit about changing your website, what that means, pros and cons again, and then you know, just some ideas on how to make your next project successful, if you're thinking about that. So.
Yeah, and for a second I thought you were just going to go down the road and we were
just talk about it. No, I just had to give enough.
Just
had to give you enough to
a little nugget
to bite on there.
No, that's what I'm calling you.
Oh, a little nugget.
My little nugget.
Yeah. So, but anyways, well, it looks like we don't have any questions this week. And last week our live feed was just blowing up. So, but this week not as much, but that's okay. If you have other questions related to this, obviously you can still ask them. Ask those questions on here, and we'll be notified, and we can get back to you. But I don't know.
Go to creativearcade.design and you can submit questions there.
Exactly.
And until next week.
Yeah, we're signing off.
Was that the home show? No, not home improvement. This old house. Isn't that what they used to say? Until next week.
Something.
Yeah. All right.
All right.
Bye-bye.
All right. See ya.